Hi, I'm Dr. Martin Wucher and welcome you to another session of Puzzle of Health. Today we're going to look at addictions at home and we will look at the different things that can happen in our homes without us even noticing. So if we go back to my journey, grew up in Namibia on a farm. I started getting involved in nature and biology. I moved to dentistry and then eventually to functional medicine, which was part and parcel of my practice. I had lots of patients, which we counseled and made programs for, and then we went online. I've been teaching, educating for, you could say, nearly 40 years. This is my passion, and the new Puzzle of Health online platform is just the latest edition. So without further ado, let's get going. Would you really consider this place as dangerous? It is a home like many others, well kept. So why am I talking this? Good question. Do you love your children? And especially if you're a grandmother or grandfather, do you love your grandchildren? I think we all know the answer. So if we do love them, would we actually give them a substance that could possibly harm them? I think the questions and the answers to that are obviously. Why don't we do that? Because I think we understand that there's a large possibility of really detrimental outcomes. Cocaine is a drug. Now, it's illegal. It's been, targeted by the, governments and so on. And it's got extremely high potential for addiction. By the way, if there is too much text on these slides, and if you want to read them, just stop, read them, and then proceed. So what is addiction? Good question. Addiction is something that we do repeatedly, and we seem to struggle to stop doing, although we often know that they're detrimental to us. They don't really help us. They bring us into deep trouble sometimes. If you look at the definitions, it's three huge. It's compulsive behavior. In other words, you repeat it over and over and over. The medical world wants to classify it as a medical problem. I don't think so. It's only a medical problem. It's a behavioral problem. And when we stop doing it, especially with drugs that we engage routinely, we get withdrawal symptoms. And withdrawal symptoms will be anxiety, aggression, and just being absolutely miserable. What has it got to do with homes? We are going to look at substances in the home and techniques to try and prevent it afterwards. The one thing that comes out of all this research, and remember, I've told you before, I'm only using independent research. So independent research meaning it goes into the deep biology of what's happening without conflicting information of trying to sell you drugs or something like that. So the hormone of addiction is dopamine. I think that's all you need to take from this slide. And dopamine is central. It gets secreted in our brain the moment you do something or you ingest something or put something in your mouth or your vein or into your stomach or even onto your skin. So our body reacts to it. Then we get a certain kick out of it. The question now is, which foods do our kids love? And I think we all know the answer. If you take a normal kid, this, for instance, is a typical, you could say, menu for kiddies. It comes from one of our local restaurants, and I'm sure they mean very well when they put that onto their menu, and kids love it. They pick whichever part they want on that day from that menu. At home, kids come home, they come in home in the afternoon and they're hungry. And you hear this story, Mom, I'm hungry, can I have X, Y, Z? And then you give them a little something, a little energy something. So what happens is the topic of today's speech or today's video. Then we look at kiddies' parties. These are the typical sweets that we give our kids when we have a party, when we really want to treat them. We invite all their friends and they really gorge on these goodies that we have here. Some people even outsource it. Restaurants market it as a special thing. This is what happens in a normal day-to-day environment. We are rushed, our life is hectic, and we grab something that's easy, available, and actually not that expensive in many cases. So this is what we all know. The question is, why do our kids go for these foods? So let's look at this research. We all know cocaine is addictive. Why is that so? There was research done on rats. They were given cocaine in their drinking water for a couple of weeks and they couldn't get away. So in the end, they were all addicted to cocaine. But then the researchers introduced an alternative. They gave them sugary water. Sugar or sucrose, something that was tasting sweet. Within a couple of weeks, you could say within 3 weeks, 80% of those rats went onto the sugar water. Now, why was that so? The reason researchers assume is because cocaine takes a bit of time. When you ingest it, it has to go to your stomach and it takes 1 to 5 minutes to give you a kick in your brain. Sugar and sucrose, which is the two sugar molecules at the top, takes seconds. The moment it touches your tongue and you taste the sweetness, you will start secreting dopamine. In fact, you just actually really need to think of something sweet and you start secreting dopamine. So the ultimate outcome was the rats had a choice in another experiment between getting intravenous cocaine. They get a cocaine shot into their veins, or they could drink sweetened water. The majority chose sugar. This is crazy. This is really, really amazing. And then within seconds, they got a kick in their brain. They got secretions of dopamine, and this is what made them feel really happy. So we've got a nice graphic here that I put together. These are the different factors that work on your gut and your brain. We're looking at the biome, your immune system, and I've put the sugar in the middle. The sugar in your gut, the sugar that has a reaction in your brain is all interconnected. And if you add fat and salt, which is the foundation of modern foods, then you have an addictive combination. So quite honestly, the first reality for today is we actually feed our kids addictive foods every day. Please take that from this lecture. There's another takeaway and a fact that I want to share with you. So what else are we doing in our home? Remember, the topic was the danger of addictive behavior in the home. Here is the next one. I think we're all well aware of what's happening with our children today, even the toddlers. And dear parents, mums, dads, whoever's watching, just make absolutely sure you look and observe and think of this carefully when you next interact with your children. If you look at the statistics, they are horrific. They are scary. If you just look at 31%, and this was in 2022, 31% of 2-year-olds or younger were using smartphones. You add the next one, 29%, so that's like 60% already. And then you add another one. So by the time they're 10 years old, you could say virtually 90% are using these gadgets. If you look at the mechanism behind it, you actually looking at the reward system, you could say the dopamine reward system. So in other words, they pick up a cell phone, they pick up a smartphone, and they go into their social media, and they start scrolling, and they click, and they get likes and dislikes. They get little red messages popping up. And this, in their mind, starts a secretion of dopamine. When they get a reward, when they get an answer, or when they don't find something in that video, the typical is TikTok. You go to the next one, and somewhere you will find a kick. It's like a video game. It's the same in addictive behavior, in gambling, and all that. So you have a chemical or you have an action, and it has a trigger, and the trigger causes a dopamine release in your brain. And from there, you have the second reality. The daily interaction with a mobile phone, not a mobile phone, with a smartphone, creates addictive behaviors in the family. And remember, I'm talking about kids now. it's not only the children. You and I are just as vulnerable. You and I are just as guilty. You and I are just as exposed as these children are. Except our brains have developed and we are mature. Children's brains are much more vulnerable, especially when it comes to psychology, functioning, and resilience for health and mental clarity. The dopamine drive does not only work for sugar and smartphones. It works for other routine things we do every day. And I'm guilty of that one. I love my coffee in the morning. And guess what? The coffee gives me a dopamine kick. It makes me awake. I have better reasoning. I get more emotional. I have better memory and motivation. And the mixture between caffeine and dopamine stimulates me. And that's why we love it so much. Our brain is very, very clever. It does it all the time. And it knows exactly what we're doing. So let's sum up this whole thing. The homes that we have and the actions we bring into them are a major contributor to this, you could call it addictive behavior. So yes, when we ask the question, does this look dangerous? No, it doesn't look dangerous. But can it be dangerous? Yes, of course. It depends on what we do with it. My basic thinking is we can only change if we understand the situation. And if we understand the situation, we can choose new actions. So my recommendation is very, very simple. Observe what's happening around you. Watch your kids, watch yourself. Become really aware of your own being, of your own behavior. Then try and learn why you're doing what you're doing. This is really a simple thing, not so. And the last thing is become involved, take control, and fix it. And this gives you an amazing opportunity to really improve your health, your experience on this planet while we're here. And this is why we've built Puzzle of Health. And thank you for watching. I'd love to see you there, see what we're building, join our community. And thank you for taking the time to listen. Bye. See you next time.